My name's James and welcome to J Review. Hello guys, hola a todos, buongiorno, bonjour, bom dia, and this is my review of the much talked about film this year, Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. It got released on Netflix this past June 26th, 2020, and has currently been ranking as one of the top 10 titles available in the service, at least in the US. Looks like from the feedback I've been reading online, it's been mostly positive, and on the critical point of view, critics say that it's not overtly terrible, but it's not really great either. It's something somewhere in the middle. So what do I think about this? So first off, Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga stars Will Ferrell as Lars and Rachel McAdams as Sigrid, two members of the group Fire Saga, an Icelandic duo who went on to represent their country of Iceland in a fictional edition of the Eurovision Song Contest, the world's biggest music competition, watched by more than 200 million people worldwide. And along the way, they've met some people that help shape the way they see things in terms of finding success and finding the music from within their hearts. It's a bit cheesy if I were to describe it, but let's break this movie down. So first of all, alongside Ferrell and McAdams, the movie also stars a bunch of really great A-name actors. I could recall Pierce Brosnan, who plays Eric's father, and Dan Stevens from Downton Abbey Legion and the recent Beauty and the Beast live-action movie. He stars as a Russian superstar, Alexander Lemtsov, who may or may not be who he says he is, but you have to watch the film to find out. So the premise of the movie is quite simple. Fire Saga went on to represent their country of Iceland in the Eurovision Song Contest, and throughout their 2-week journey, I believe, in the competition, they were able to meet various people who helped redefine their journey on what it means to be a winner in their own musical adventure. It's quite a very predictable movie, given that it is a Will Ferrell movie, so you know how it goes if it's anything that has Will Ferrell on it. But at the same time, it's not something that you can easily brush off, because the movie is quite heartwarming. It's not ridiculous to the point that it basically is offensive in terms of its content and whatnot. But surprisingly, it just feels very lighthearted. It has a lot of heart, and there's so much to like about it that there's a lot of pluses rather than minuses. So for the pluses, I was genuinely surprised at the amount of research that were put into the making of this film, a film about the Eurovision Song Contest. There were a lot of intricate subtleties that only those who are familiar with the contest would easily identify with. But at the same time, it was very streamlined for the purposes of telling a linear story in the movie. For example, the process of how you select your song. Most often, a lot of countries who take part in Eurovision have what they call a national selection or a national final, which serves as a qualifier for which the country or the country's broadcasts are able to choose the kind of song they want to send to the competition. And afterwards, there's also the process of pre-parties, bet making odds, rehearsals, musical rehearsals, technical rehearsals, and also the concept of semifinals and a grand final at the end of Eurovision week. It doesn't come across as something as spoon-feeding to the audience, and I'm glad they went to that route, because it made the movie more accessible for for the two particular audiences that the movie was going after: the Euro fans and those who are being introduced to what Eurovision is, and those who are finding out what Eurovision is for the very first time. And another plus has got to be the cameos of Eurovision alumni. It doesn't come across as something that they just have to insert in throughout the movie just for the sake of, of baiting your Eurovision fans, but rather just something that they seem to be very integral to the storytelling. For example, we first listen to one of the winning songs of one of the recent editions of the contest, Amar Pelos Deutsch by Salvador Sobral, being played in the background as the two leads tour around Edinburgh in Scotland, and then the montage ends with the camera showing a street performer who looks exactly like Salvador Sobral playing on the piano and being watched by passersby, including Sigrid and Lars. Another would have to be the special song along in the middle of the film, where the film were able to utilize as much Eurovision alumni as they could in this grand celebration of the song contest. I can feel the spirit of the contest being celebrated in this 3.5 movie piece of musical extravaganza. I was able to identify quite a number. Surprisingly, Ana Odobescu, Jessie Matador, Loreen, Jon Lundvik, Bilal Hassani, Elina Nechayeva, and Netta, as well as, oh my god, Conchita Wurst and Alexander Rybak. This entire movie is basically a love letter to all the fans of the Eurovision Song Contest. And what non-fans may be a little confused as to why there are these people singing in the middle of the movie, despite the fact that it's a musical movie. It's one of those points in the movie that probably would help non-viewers to be at least curious as to who they are, and probably search about them online, and then eventually find their way to watching the contest itself. As for the minuses, I've gotta say it's just a few of them that really annoyed me a bit. I think it's the pacing of the second act, something that has to do with Lemtsov, the character played by Dan Stevens. I think it kind of slow down the pacing that the pacing of the movie a bit. It doesn't really necessarily is a bad thing, because I find Lemtsov to be a very interesting character. He fits the stereotypical archetype of whatever Hollywood movies or American-made movies portray Russian characters. He may come across as a very self-absorbed villain, but he's actually not a villain. This person has a lot of layers that unfortunately was left unexplored, other than what we find out at the end of the film, or what we suspected along the way. But it is still refreshing that he didn't fit exactly the archetype that we have come to expect when it comes to how American movies portray Russian characters. So I'm glad about that. And elsewhere, one thing that really bothered me would have to be anything that that reminds you that this is a Will Ferrell film. So I don't have a particular problem with the movies that stars Will Ferrell exactly, but rather it's something that I find very predictable in the way that you've come to expect Will Ferrell playing these over-the-top characters that that either makes or break the movie he stars in. It can be a little overbearing at times, especially in this movie where he comes across as a grown man who acts very childish, a big baby basically. and that's really annoys me because I would have expected him to be at least even if the character has some issues with his father, played by Pierce Brosnan. I would at least expect him to be a little more acting his age, in the sense that it doesn't come across as Will Ferrell, if you know what I mean. But I'm glad at the same time that those moments in the movie where he really goes overbearing are just far few in between. And when I mean far few in between, I have to be very particular that much of the overbearing comes from this particular scene in the latter half, in the third act, where he was in a boat with his father, where the character was at its worst yet, before coming to this realization that it wasn't as the situation in the contest wasn't as bad as he feared that it was. That aspect of the film did really dominate. They did not eventually overpower the movie itself, and we were able to only just get small doses of the Will Ferrell archetype in Fire Saga. And he allowed some breathing room for other characters in the movie to shine, particularly the character of Sigrid, played by Rachel McAdams. And yes, basically Rachel McAdams really shone in this movie, much more so than Will Ferrell, which I think he did on purpose because it really helped Rachel to really elevate the character, which may seem a little kooky or silly on paper, but when you add some dimensions to this particular character, you feel very invested on her journey, and especially on how she feels about the people she loves, the people she left behind in order to pursue this dream that Lars had for a very long time, and where she tagged along to support their band, but at the same time rediscovering who she is as an artist, which eventually Lars was able to recognize towards the end of the film. So the movie was directed by David Dobkin, who is well known for directing several comedies, including a few of Will Ferrell's past movies, including Wedding Crashers, I believe. And the soundtrack of the movie was headed by executive music producer and well-noted American songwriter Savan Kotecha. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. And I think, other than Rachel McAdams and Dan Stevens, I think one of the stars of the movie has got to be the music. Most of the tracks in the soundtrack of Fire Saga actually do pass as actual Eurovision songs. They do pass as very Eurovision-esque, and they really help give me this feeling of that I'm reliving the contest all over again, especially given the timing of when the film was released. Because of the current coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, the 65th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest was unfortunately being cancelled, and we didn't have a contest for it this year. So it really helped the movie, the Fire Saga, really helped fill that void that was left in the hearts of many Eurovision fans. It more than makes up for the loss we had this year, and I'm really glad that the music really was a focal point in the entire movie. At the same time, and I'm tired of saying at the same time, but I just have to say this because while the music is the star, it was quite obvious that the movie merely used the Eurovision Song Contest, the contest itself, as a backdrop to allow us a very cohesive storytelling, that well integrated narrative device as a point of motivation for Lars and Sigrid, rather than being about a contest that may not necessarily be something that would be understood by much of the non-Eurovision audience that the show is going after, other than the Euro fans. So overall, Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga is not may not be the Oscar-winning film it was never touted to be, but it's not a very terrible film either. Rather, it's a very light-hearted film that really is heartwarming, and there's a lot to really be. There's a lot about this film that could really put a smile on your face. It makes you root for the characters. It makes you root for the side characters as well. It makes you love the music, the songs that were performed there, especially two particular tracks, Husavik and Double Trouble. And shout out also to Mo San for providing the singing voice of Rachel McAdams. I really love what she brought to the table. And I think this is the kind of film that you want to go back to rewatching on Netflix over and over again, just to relieve that feeling that you have from the first time you watch it, that you feel very belonged, and it really fills that kind of void that you normally would have after every Eurovision. So yeah, it's a movie for everyone, although there may be portions of the movie that may not necessarily be very family friendly, but as long as you're with an adult, you're fine. While I don't have high expectations of the film from the get-go, I was really curious on what Will Ferrell has brought to the table, knowing that he is the most familiar, he's one of the few American celebrities who is most familiar about the contest, having a Swedish family, a Swedish wife, and having watched the contest for a very long time. So he knows the intricacies, he knows the subtleties, he knows the culture that comes with watching the Eurovision Song Contest. So this was his love letter to the contest that we all appreciate, that we all love. And for that, I thank Will Ferrell. So yeah, I really recommend you guys to watch this film if you want to know more about the contest on service level. And for the Euro fans, this may not give an accurate portrayal of the contest, but it does have many of the things that we know that are associated with the contest. So there is that. And now, guys, thank you for watching this review. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you like more J reviews, I will happily put them out there if I can. And yeah, I guess that's it for me. My name is James, and I'll see you guys later. Bye, au revoir, paalam, adios.